World leaders, business magnates, and policymakers have gathered in the Swiss ski resort of Davos for the latest annual World Economic Forum, a meeting known for shaping global economic trends, political strategies, and international partnerships. This year, the forum has drawn attention not just for economic debates, but for the high-stakes diplomacy unfolding behind closed doors. So what did Trump do at the economic forum? Let's find out. I'm Star Smart, and this is the Flash News. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, President Donald Trump said he had reached a framework agreement with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Greenland and Arctic security, a sharp departure from his earlier much harsher threats to seize the strategically critical territory by force and even impose tariffs on European allies.
The concept of a deal, I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
The market, 600 points, getting back a lot of some of the nervousness we had in the last couple of days. The tariffs are off. Nothing happens on February 1st.
No, we took that off because it looks like we have pretty much a concept of a deal.
A deal of ownership, a deal...
Well, it's a little bit complex, but we'll explain it down the line. But the Secretary General of NATO and I and some other people were talking, and it's a kind of a deal that I wanted to be able to...
Well, President Donald Trump presented this shift as a victory, claiming the United States got everything that they wanted and formally dropped the tariff threats that had alarmed Denmark. Greenland's sovereign power and other NATO member states. Let's take a listen to what other European allies had to say, specifically President Macron.
This is as well a shift toward a world without effective collective governance, and where multilateralism is weakened by powers that obstruct it or turn away from it, and rules are undermined. And I can multiply the examples of international bodies weakened or left by the key economies. And when we look at the situation, it's clearly a very concerning time, because we are killing the structure where we can fix the situation and the common challenges we have. Without collective governance, cooperation gives way to relentless competition. Competition from the United States of America, through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe, combined with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable, even more so when they are used as leverage against territorial sovereignty. Faced with the brutal decision of the world, France and Europe must defend an effective multilateralism, because it serves our interests and those of all who refuse to submit to the rule of force.
But then any notion of a United States acquisition of Greenland appears to be off the table for now. Rutte and NATO spokespeople made clear that sovereign control of Greenland was not discussed in the talks and that no concessions on that issue were offered or agreed, underscoring respect for Danish sovereignty. The real substance, according to Allied officials, lies in the pledge to intensify NATO's role in Arctic security, an area of rising geopolitical competition with Russia and China.
So Donald Trump on the podium saying that he wanted that big, beautiful block of ice, goes into a room with you and he says he has a framework for a deal. What did you do?
President Trump has been clear from when he was in office, Trump 45, also when he came back into office, Trump 47, that when it comes to the protection of the Arctic, with a priority on Greenland, we have to spend more energy, more time, more focus on this, because we know the sea lanes are opening up. The Chinese and the Russians are more and more active. So what we discussed last night, how in a practical sense we can get this done. And we agreed on these two tracks. One is the 7 countries in the high north, including the United States, working together to protect against any adversary. So that will be something where NATO is heavily involved. And then when it comes to Greenland specifically, continuing the discussions they started last week. The Danish delegation, Secretary Rubio, Vice President Vance in Washington, to continue that discussion. Also to make sure that when it comes to Greenland specifically, their economy, their military situation, Russia and China will never get access.
And the Danes and sovereignty, is that all assured?
We didn't discuss at all about that issue. So we discussed how can we protect Greenland, how can we protect the wider Arctic region. And again, I think President Trump was the one who reinvigorated NATO at the summit in The Hague with the famous 5%. I think we can be thankful for the fact that he again has been able to take leadership on this issue. How can we collectively protect the Arctic?
Well, so what's the significance? The episode reveals both the limits of presidential brinksmanship in foreign policy and how quickly rhetoric can be repackaged into more conventional alliance cooperation. Now, does Trump's retreat signal a genuine diplomatic win or merely a tactical repositioning that preserves alliance unity while avoiding a potentially explosive dispute over a NATO partner's territory? Well, we'll take a look at this video right here.
Welcome, the chairman of the Board of Peace, the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Well, this is a very exciting day, long in the making, and many countries have just received their notice, and everybody wants to be a part of it, and we'll work with many others, including the United Nations.
Well, that's President Donald Trump still in Davos, where he held the signing ceremony of the Board of Peace. Yes, we clearly saw that. We hope it comes back on screen. President Donald Trump in Davos, where he held the signing ceremony launching his much publicized Board of Peace, a supposed international body for resolving conflict, originally pitched as a mechanism tied to Gaza's ceasefire and reconstruction framework, with participation fees reportedly around $1 billion US dollars per member. Now, the body has since ballooned into a broader and controversial initiative with global aspirations. Trump said leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, had agreed to join, though Putin had suggested he was still considering the invitation. Let's take a listen to what President Putin had to say.
Well, of course, regarding the Board of Peace, we have indeed received a personal appeal from the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, with an invitation to join a new international structure being created at his initiative, the Board of Peace. In this regard, I would like, first of all, to thank the President of the United States for this proposal. We have always supported and continue to support any efforts aimed at strengthening international stability. We also note the contribution of the current U.S. administration to the search for a solution to settle the Ukrainian crisis. Regarding our participation in the Board of Peace, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been instructed to study the documents we received, to consult on this matter with our strategic partners, and only after that will we be able to give an answer to the invitation conveyed to us.
Well, other confirmed participants include Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who reversed earlier reservations over the board's composition to accept membership, and Hungary's Viktor Orban, while the Pope has reportedly also been invited. Critics argue the board's structure, costs, and membership undermine its credibility, especially given tensions over Gaza's governance and the presence of leaders with starkly divergent interests. Allies have questioned the body's utility, and many have declined to take part. Whether this will be remembered as an innovative forum for peace or a United States-led gambit to reshape diplomatic architecture, that remains unclear. But it raises a rhetorical challenge. Can a peace initiative be effective if key global actors doubt its neutrality or purpose? Well, in Japan, we see the Japanese court has sentenced Tetsuya Yamagami 45 to life imprisonment for the 2022 assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during a campaign speech, a crime that upended Japan's long-held image of near impenetrable public security and minimal gun violence. The Nara District Court found Yamagami guilty of murder and related weapons offenses, handing down life imprisonment in recognition of an act a judge called vile and extremely malicious. Abe's killing was a crude, homemade firearm sent shockwaves through Japan and sparked an intense national conversation about political violence, security at public events, and the influence of religious organization in politics. Yamagami told the court his motive was tied to resentment towards the Unification Church and its perceived ties to Abe, blaming the organization for his family's financial ruin. Importantly, Japan's system of life imprisonment often allows for parole decades later, but the sentence reflects the gravity with which the judiciary treated an attack on one of Japan's most prominent leaders. The case also accelerated scrutiny of political religious networks, prompting legislative discussion around tighter regulation and protections. In a country so unaccustomed to political assassinations, the implications extend far beyond one courtroom. How will Japan safeguard its democracy while balancing public access to political figures? That's a question that leaves for answer. But then in Israel, it is now agreed to join President Donald Trump's Board of Peace after initial reluctance over the composition of its Gaza executive component, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced. The initiative, born as a relatively small group overseeing Gaza's ceasefire plan, has expanded into a broader diplomatic forum that the United States suggests could mediate other conflict. Netanyahu's participation underscores the delicate diplomatic tightrope the board must walk, securing buy-in from key partners while balancing competing regional interests, particularly in the Middle East. Now, the question is whether the board can transition from a headline-grabbing project into a substantive platform that addresses conflict resolution effectively, or whether its expansive membership and hefty participation expectations will dilute its influence or fuel disagreement amongst nations. In our flash news today, we see that from Arctic diplomacy and ambitious peace initiatives to high-profile legal rulings and shifting control in conflict zones, today's global headlines reveal a world in motion where power, security, and human stakes intersect. Each story underscores the delicate balance nations must navigate between ambition, responsibility, and the consequences of action. reminding us that every decision on the world stage carries ripple effects far beyond the immediate moment. But this has been the Flash News. Coming up next is Undaunted News. Do stay tuned.